This World News program coming to you live from Algiers with me, Mariam Zian, to the headlines. The death toll from the Kaluki massacre in South Kordofan has risen to at least 80. The United Nations warns that impunity is fueling rapid support forces abuses, while the Sovereign Council reiterates its refusal to enter any agreement that would bring the RSF back into the picture. Also, coming up tonight in Gaza, the Israeli occupation continues to bomb Rafah and Khan Yunis in the south of the Strip. UNICEF says 11,000 children have suffered life-altering injuries, and UN bodies are calling for pressure on Israel to end its attacks on Gaza. Algeria is preparing to host Africa's largest startup event. Organizations said the gathering is an opportunity to explore new mechanisms for financing innovation and stress its importance as a key platform for sharing expertise across the continent. And in the latest on the war in Ukraine, the Kremlin says talks with the US have been encouraging and confirms Russia's readiness to continue working toward peace negotiations. Zelensky says Kiev is continuing discussions with Washington to understand Putin's pretexts, while Trump expresses confidence that a solution to end the conflict can be reached. Welcome back. First, the death toll from the Rapid Support Forces massacre in the city of Kaluki, South Kordofan, has risen to 80 people, including 46 children. Local sources told Al-24 News on Friday that RSF fighters, the affiliated SPLM Hilu, launched suicide drones on Thursday, targeting a kindergarten and several civilian facilities in Kaluki. According to the same sources, the attack left 80 people dead, in an initial toll expected to rise due to the number of critical injuries. The UN's human rights chief Volker Turk warned Thursday that Sudan's Kordofan region is facing escalating violence that could mirror the atrocities seen in Al-Fashir, where thousands of civilians were reportedly killed during a prolonged siege. Turk said that intensified fighting has driven more than 45,000 people from their homes in the past month alone, raising urgent concerns about civilian safety and humanitarian access.
I fear another wave of atrocities in Sudan amid a surge in fierce fighting across the Kordofan region. We must not allow Kordofan to become another Al-Fashir. Since the 25th of October, when Rapid Support Forces captured Bara city in North Kordofan, my office has documented at least 269 civilian deaths from aerial strikes, artillery shelling, and summary execution.
The Sudanese Mashhad organization says the figures and statistics being circulated do not reflect the true scale of violations against Sudanese civilians. In a statement to Al-24 News on Friday, the head of the organization, Ahmed Abdullah Ismail, confirmed the existence of systematic efforts to downplay the abuses committed by the RSF against civilians.
There is a deliberate media campaign aimed at downplaying the scale of the violations and portraying an unrealistic image. This is the biggest challenge we are still facing. The temporary situation caused by the internet shutdown during the elections is a major crisis. We, along with many of our partners, are working tirelessly to deliver a truthful message to the world about what the Sudanese citizen is currently experiencing. Sudan needs global representation. It needs regional and international solidarity. The situation is in complete collapse, truly collapsing in every sense of the word.
الآن الوضع في انهيار بمعنى الكلمة.
The Sudanese government says the Rapid Support Forces have committed every possible violation of international law against civilians. Speaking to Al-24 News, Minister of State for Social Welfare, Salma Ishaq, said the war in Sudan is not a civil war, but an aggression supported by regional actors seeking to plunder the country's resources and divide its territory.
يعني الحرب في السودان فهم الحرب في السودان.
The war in Sudan and understanding this war in its proper context is one of the keys to resolving it. Grasping the broader context is essential. This is not a civil war. It is an aggression against Sudan carried out by regional and international actors, driven of course by the country's natural resources. This war has spared no one. From the very beginning, women and children were targeted. The Rapid Support Forces used starvation and all forms of violations of international humanitarian law. Every known tool of warfare has been used in Sudan.
وأدوات الحرب المعروفة تم استخدامها في السودان.
And still with news of Sudan, the army in Sudan announced it will reclaim every inch of the country defiled by the RSF, adding that its forces are fully prepared to continue the war. Addressing soldiers of the 6th Infantry Division in Al-Fashir on Friday, Tariq Saoud, commander of the Army's 19th Infantry Division, said the armed forces and supporting units are steadily advancing across multiple fronts in western Sudan. He called for unity and cohesion across all units to achieve victory and stability for the Sudanese people. And now in occupied Palestine, Israeli occupation tanks carried out artillery strikes on the cities of Khan Yunis and Rafah in southern Gaza at dawn on Friday, coinciding with ongoing shelling of the Yellow Lines areas east of the Strip. Palestinian media sources reported heavy artillery fire and gunfire targeting the northeastern parts of Khan Yunis and areas near the Mawasi axis north of Rafah. This comes as Israel escalates its attacks on the Yellow Line areas with intensified bombing and the demolition of homes and infrastructure. The UNICEF says 11,000 children in Gaza have suffered life-altering injuries since October 2023. The organization added that children with disabilities in the Strip face immense challenges as 2/3 of rehabilitation services have been destroyed. The spokesperson for the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Tamim al-Khitan, called for pressure on the Israeli occupation to end its attacks on Gaza. In a statement on Friday, he urged all those with influence to use it to force Israel to halt the war and comply with the International Criminal Court of Justice rulings to end Israel's illegal presence in the occupied Palestinian territories. The Palestinian man died on Friday from wounds sustained after Israeli forces stormed the village of Odala, south of Nablus. The Palestinian news agency reported that Israeli forces raided the center of the village, firing live bullets and toxic gas canisters as worshippers exited the mosque. A young man was shot in the head and later succumbed to his injuries. The Israeli forces renewed their incursion into the towns of Said al-Hanout, Bir Ajam, and Breika in southern Qunaytira. Sana reported Friday that an Israeli force with 6 vehicles penetrated Said al-Hanout, while another force with 4 vehicles and a heavy Terex machine advanced toward Bir Ajam and Breika, carrying out extensive excavation works in the area. And Lebanese President Joseph Aoun on Friday urged a visiting UN Security Council delegation to pressure Israel to comply with the ceasefire and called for support for the Lebanese army to continue its mission of controlling weapons in the south. During his meeting with ambassadors and representatives of the Security Council missions visiting Lebanon for a 2-day mission, Aoun reaffirmed Lebanon's commitment to implementing international resolutions and stressed the need to ensure Israel fulfills its obligations. And Algeria is set to host the 4th African Startup Conference this Saturday, the continent's largest gathering of innovators and entrepreneurs, bringing ambitious ideas and creative minds together under one roof. Nabil Khazini has the report.
It is widely considered the biggest gathering of its kind in Africa, bringing together innovators, policymakers, and investors under one roof. Over the course of the next 3 days, the International Conference Center in Algiers will turn into a dynamic meeting point for thousands of young entrepreneurs and tech professionals.
There is 2 major events that we have mentioned already. The investors meeting, which is GPLP Summit, and the other point is the meeting between ministers and founders. So maybe it's the first time we did it in Africa, where ministers will meet founders and will tell frankly what is going wrong, what can we be done together in order to make African technology greater and used by the African countries.
This year's edition carries a clear ambition, strengthening Africa's capacity to produce its own tech champions. And for Algeria, the host country, the event is more than important. In recent years, Algeria has positioned itself as a pioneer in Africa's innovation landscape, building one of the continent's most active ecosystems for startups. Discussions throughout the conference will span over key sectors, including artificial intelligence, fintech, content industries, climate solutions, and digital entrepreneurship, offering young innovators a chance to pitch their ideas and turn them into viable projects.
During the next edition, we are organizing the GPLP Summit. And this GPLP Summit has been organized because today, in 2025, Algeria has released the GPLP legal framework. So today, World Bank or African Bank or any international institution can come in Algeria and launch a fund within 2 weeks only.
Along the coast of Algiers, where the sea meets the sky, a quiet expectation is sensed that the ideas born this week may shape Africa's future.
Ndomo Moebe, president of the African Startups Association, TAS Africa, said the 4th edition of the African Startup Conference hosted by Algeria, starting tomorrow, Saturday, offers a key opportunity to explore new mechanisms for financing innovative entrepreneurs, describing such financing as a fundamental pillar of the continent's startup ecosystem.
Access to funding remains one of the major challenges facing startups in Africa, as banks require heavy guarantees that do not match the nature of these companies' activities. Foreign investors, meanwhile, view the African market as high risk. Beyond the issue of financing, startups across the continent face several other challenges, including improving digital infrastructure, especially high-speed internet, as well as innovation incubators and cloud-based solutions. They also need stronger partnerships between the public and private sectors, allowing startups to focus on developing their products and expanding into new markets.
Omoebe further emphasized that several African countries have made remarkable progress in improving their startup ecosystem. Let's listen to her.
The instability of regulatory frameworks and the complexity of administrative procedures remain major obstacles to the growth of startups in many African countries. The Algeria Conference offers an important platform to tackle these challenges through direct and open dialogue between governments and actors in the startup ecosystem. Some African countries have already made significant progress, providing models the rest of the continent can learn from. This makes it essential to discuss harmonizing economic and commercial laws to help startups enter markets across Africa. The 4th Startup Conference in Algeria is a key opportunity to boost this alignment and strengthen cross-border cooperation among innovative entrepreneurs.
And in Ethiopia, the Amhara regional government and the Fano Popular Organization have signed a permanent peace agreement after talks mediated by the African Union and IGAD, a major step toward ending years of tension. This deal comes after direct efforts and negotiations led by AU Deputy Chairperson, Algerian Ambassador Malika Haddadi. More details with Marwa Belaiwar.
A historic African Union-brokered agreement led by Algerian diplomacy has officially ended a bloody conflict that gripped Ethiopia's Amhara region for more than 2 years. The deal signed between the Amhara regional government and the Amhara Fano Popular Organization closes a turbulent chapter in a region long marked by tension and armed confrontation. The breakthrough crowns months of intensive mediation personally steered by AU Deputy Chairperson Algerian diplomat Malika Haddadi. Her leadership embodied the AU's doctrine of African solutions to African problems, a principle highlighted just days earlier in Algiers during the Iran Process Conference. For Ethiopia and for the continent, this marks a turning point. What had once weighed heavily on Ethiopia's federal system and cast a shadow over stability and development in the continent's political capital has now, through African-led diplomacy, become a model for resolving conflicts across the continent, from the Democratic Republic of Congo to the Sahel and most recently Sudan. The success of negotiations in Amhara, a region bordering Eritrea and Sudan, reinforces the AU's flagship call to silence the guns. The agreement is now held up as a critical milestone within the AU's long-term vision for stability and development under Agenda 2063.
And Algeria showcased in Geneva its pioneering nationally driven experience in demining, along with the measures deployed to protect and support victims of anti-personnel mines. During the 22nd meeting of states parties to the Anti-Personnel Mine Ban Convention held in Geneva from December 1st to 5th, Algeria reaffirmed its full commitment to the convention's objectives, banning the use, stockpiling, production and transfer of anti-personnel mines, as well as their destruction. Algeria also stressed the need for all state parties to uphold the convention and strengthen collective efforts to achieve its universality, with the ultimate goal of a mine-free world. And the Democratic Republic of the Congo and Rwanda have signed a new peace agreement aimed at ending escalating tensions in eastern Congo. The signing took place Thursday in Washington under U.S. mediation, with both sides reaffirming their commitment to de-escalation. The deal is seen as an important diplomatic step toward destabilizing the region, despite ongoing local concerns about the difficulty of implementing its provisions on the ground. And the Aquaculture Stewardship Council in the Netherlands announced the suspension of all its activities in occupied Western Sahara. In the statement, the Council said it is aligning its position with that of the United Nations and will subject any activities in Western Sahara to strict human rights due diligence processes. And Moroccan human rights activists have announced the formation of a committee to support the families of the victims of the repression of the Gen Z movement. The committee aims to intensify efforts to monitor and support families of those killed, detained, and released pending trial during the protests.
The National Committee to Support Families of Victims of the Gen Z movement appeals to all families and relatives of martyrs, detainees, and those released, as well as victims of the crackdown, to connect with the committee and strengthen efforts for monitoring and support. The committee was established in response to the call of Gen Z youth and aims to support the movement and those affected by the oppression and violence they faced.
The UN support mission in Libya has outlined how it will select the roughly 120 members of the structured dialogue proposed in its roadmap to the Security Council. UNSMIL said over 1,000 Libyans applied and that candidates will be assessed based on key criteria, including a clean human rights and corruption record, relevant experience in governance or national issues, commitment to the national interest, and the ability to participate effectively over the 4 to 6 month dialogue period. And in other news, the Kremlin announced that Russia and the United States are making progress in their peace talks on Ukraine, reaffirming Moscow's readiness to continue working with current U.S. team. Presidential aide Yuri Ushakov said Friday that court negotiations involving both presidents are seeing tangible progress, describing the development as encouraging and stressing Russia's willingness to maintain coordination with Washington. According to the Russian information agency, Ushakov added that Moscow is now awaiting the U.S. response to the discussions held last Tuesday. Ushakov also stated Friday that Moscow is still waiting for Washington's reaction to proposals discussed during President Vladimir Putin's meeting with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. He told reporters there is still no agreement on holding another meeting or scheduled a new round of talks, noting that the issue of the occupied Ukrainian territories remains the main obstacle to reaching an agreement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said his delegation will continue talks on Friday in Florida with U.S. President Donald Trump's team to explore pathways to peace with Russia. In a video posted on X, he said the mission aims to obtain full clarity on what he described as new pretexts fabricated by Vladimir Putin to prolong the war and pressure Ukraine. Zelensky added that Ukraine is prepared for all scenarios and will work constructively with its partners to secure what he called peace.
Бажаю здоров'я. Сьогодні українські представники продовжать
Ukrainian representatives will continue today the discussions in the USA with President Trump's team. Our current mission consists of gathering overall information about what happened in Moscow and the pretexts that Putin came up with to prolong the war and pressure on Ukraine. Ukraine is ready to face up to all possible developments, and we will certainly work in a constructive, positive, and fruitful way with all our partners to secure achieving a peace that lives up to our people's sacrifices.
And U.S. President Donald Trump said Thursday that the United States will ultimately succeed in reaching a solution to end the conflict in Ukraine. At the National Christmas Tree Lighting Ceremony at the White House's South Lawn, Trump said Washington is working hard to end the war and underlined the need to stop the fighting, adding that his administration is pursuing the goal very diligently. And Russian President Vladimir Putin affirmed that Moscow is taking steps in coordination with several international partners, including the U.S., to reach a possible peaceful settlement to the Ukrainian crisis. Speaking during joint talks with Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in New Delhi, Putin welcomed the opportunity to discuss developments in Ukraine in detail and expressed gratitude for India's efforts to help find a solution. Russia and India signed a series of agreements during Putin's visit to New Delhi for the annual summit aimed at expanding defense and trade cooperation between the two countries. Following talks between Modi and Putin, the Indian Prime Minister announced a new program for economic cooperation. This 23rd Russia-India summit comes as Washington pushes for a peace agreement on Ukraine while seeking to secure global cooperation.
Taking the economic cooperation to newer heights is our common goal. To fulfill this, we have agreed upon an economic cooperation program till 2030. Through this, our trade and investment will diversify, remain balanced, and become sustainable, and newer dimensions will be achieved in these areas of cooperation.
President Putin also pledged during his meeting with Prime Minister Modi that Russia will continue supplying fuel to India. He revealed that several agreements have been finalized to strengthen bilateral cooperation with the goal of raising trade volume between Moscow and New Delhi to $100 billion by 2030. This marks Putin's first visit to India in 4 years, aimed at boosting trade ties with one of the largest buyers of Russian weapons and seaborne oil.
Energy partnership is developing successfully. Russia is a reliable supplier of energy resources and everything needed for the development of India's energy industry. We are ready to continue ensuring uninterrupted fuel supplies for India's fast-growing economy.
And to some sports news now, Algeria has been drawn in the Group J at the 2026 World Cup alongside Argentina, Austria and Jordan. The Algerian national football team will play its opening match on June 16 against the reigning World Cup champions and title holders, the Argentinian team. The draw for the tournament took place at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And that was it for tonight's program. Thank you for watching and have a great night.